Welcome to the Accounting Arc Podcast, where analysis, reaction, and comedy collide to tackle the big topics from the world of accounting and beyond. Join our trio of transformation agents as they discuss the hottest topics in and out of the profession, from breaking down industry trends, to reacting to everyday events, to uncovering the hidden humor in numbers. With wisdom, insight, and a dash of levity, they're proving that accounting isn't just about the numbers. It's about life. Because after all, accounting is in everything. The Accounting Arc Podcast starts now.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Accounting Arc. Today I'm pretty tired because some of you may or may not know that I'm actually a caregiver for my great aunt who broke her leg. Not quite as bad as Liz, but actually maybe worse because not Liz is older, my aunt is older. So she's having a tough time in recovery, and while I don't do the physical caregiving, I provide a lot of the emotional support, and I had to coordinate her movements over this last month from hospital ER to regular hospital to rehab and now to a foster home as we're trying to work her through all this recovery, as well as take her to all the doctor's appointments and all these things. And it was interesting because this aligned over with some broader research that the Accounting Move Project is planning to do this year around the impact of caregiving in the workplace. And so I thought this might be an interesting one for us to just look at as a whole, because why is this even worth us talking about? I don't know. Liz, Byron, what do you guys think? Is this worth Move actually doing some research around?
Absolutely, because I think that this is something that we experience as humans, especially if we have family that we care about, right? And I can say, like, I am in a moment of needing help and needing some additional caregiving that I normally don't. And it's also very hard for me to ask. And I am super lucky that my partner she works from home and has the flexibility to help me, like, get up and down stairs when I need to, and can, like, bring me my computer in the other room when I'm crutching around the house trying to move, because I can't sit in one place all day. Like, even with a broken leg, I can't do that. Like, I would go nuts, right? And so it's like little things like that you don't even think of and you take for granted that a lot of people need, right? And I know, like, personally, I have a son. We have plenty of members on our team that have special needs kids, or even, spouses with degenerative diseases where they are primary breadwinner, primary caregiver. And it's, like, so important to have these open dialogues about what the needs are in that space. And so when you ask, like, is this research worth it? Like, is this something, this is so worth it and so important to such a big percentage of our country. Especially when you consider, like, parents. I mean, like, how many times have you had a sick kid at home and you've had to, like, figure out work, right? Like, it is hard. It is not always easy. And if you're lucky, it's easy. And so talking about this, researching this, like, making this a topic that's in front of employers and in front of our industries so that we can make better decisions and be more cognizant of experiences in this world is so important.
Well, I think you nailed it, Liz. For many years, when you talked about being like a caregiver, it really was all mostly about people having children, right? And there's like I think we're at a point in time where we have this huge population of humans who are getting older and having a lot of challenges, which is definitely squeezing us as both ends. And I think as a result is creating more consciousness for all that other stuff in between, like the Liz's of the world who run into trees and need some caregiving at times. So I'm really happy to hear these conversations are happening. And, my daughters are in their 20s. They're now adults. And I think back 20 years ago to when they were young and I was trying to manage starting my career as a professional and trying to be as engaged of a parent as I possibly could. And I don't remember there being any resources available to figure out what the right recipe was and the right way to even approach those conversations.
I'm so glad you brought up the elder care side too, because I think as someone that's been single, still is single for quite a while, and but having taken care of my grandparents when they needed help, I ended up living with my grandfather. Now I've got this aunt. This great aunt is actually my grandmother's youngest sister, so I've been kind of a perpetual elder caregiver for quite a while. I think often when people see the single person, they're like, well, that person's single. They don't have any responsibilities. Not always true. And I really feel even more for those that are caught that, what do they call them, the sandwich generation, which
Hmm.
is so most of Gen X, I think, right now, where you're doing both the elder caregiving and you've got the kids to deal with. I don't know how people that have both sides deal with that. That would drive me nuts. Just one side drives me nuts.
Well, it's a lot of work, right? And I think that that's the difficulty in this country. And like, I always think all the evil stems from the patriarchy, but like that's a whole other side conversation. But I do think that there is some truth here in this, because when it comes to caregiving, it was expected of women, and it was also expected historically that women weren't really working, right? And so there was this extra set of hands, and potentially multiple, because women often had daughters that would take care of the parents as they aged and would also take care of the young and potentially grandkids as well. But they didn't have a job to get in the way of that, right? And now we're at a point in this economy where, like, you can't really afford, and in most cases, I should say, for the vast majority of Americans,
Right.
to have multiple people in your family just not contribute at all from a financial perspective. And so, despite like all the generations of us like thinking maybe I'll stop that tangent, but either way, women mostly have jobs now, and we can't do both things at the same time. Like, this is an unrealistic expectation that often falls on us, and it even falls on us in the sense that like, elderly people don't think through that, right? Like, my grandparents have had issues on and off, and everybody has always looked at my aunts or me or my sister and been like, why don't you guys do more? And it's like, why don't all the boys in our family do anything too, right? And it's like, well, we just didn't think to ask. It's not that anyone's like actually sexist or like thinking about that. It's that the question frequently comes to women. Um, but it's like that is not the case in today's day and age. Like, it is shared equally, the burden should be equal, and it has been, more and more become, both men and women that are put in that role, especially as women are not the default caregivers because they're not working, right? As we're all working, like, the difference to 100 years ago, is huge, and it makes a big difference on the ability to have that help at home. And for better or worse, that is kind of where it's come from, right? And why it's become such a big issue in today's day and age.
I mean, yes, and it's a huge challenge because I even see it in my family as my mom is aging and has medical needs. She has this mentality that she doesn't want to be a burden. And but she does naturally go to my sister for most of her caregiving needs. She doesn't want to bother the boys, like and it's kind of interesting because it doesn't matter how much we've said, like, we'll like we kind of, me and my siblings have a separate group chat for like mom's things. And it's like, we're going to keep each other connected because mom's not going to do it. It's all just going to go to our sister. So that is a challenge that I think just requires, unfortunately, those who are expected to take care of it to figure out those resources, to connect with the brothers, the uncles, the whatever it is, to bring in the family and spread that responsibility.
Right. And 100 years ago, your sister probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to have a job. So this would have been her role, and there would have been no questions whatsoever.
Sure.
And there was inherently a family role for caregiving, right? Like that was
That's right.
inherently part of our family structures and part of our society that is now gone. So now we're all working, we're all trying to balance all of this. And it is so hard, like doing that, Donnie, like I know that you have been that person for your family consistently, and partially because you are successful and have your own practice and you're able to be there physically. And also like that's exhausting. It's a lot.
It can be at times, definitely, but it's infinitely rewarding, as both of you probably would attest to the child side as well. Like that, I cannot deal with. I love having my niece and nephew, taking them for a day and then giving them back at the end of the day after a while. But both of you raised also some interesting points that makes me think too. So the whole concept of having the designated caregiver. So this great aunt is actually single, which is why I'm sort of an inherited son, or maybe grandchild, I should say. She's closer in age to my
Yeah.
mom than my grandmother. Um, so there is that, but she was the youngest out of all of them, and her job was actually, in a sense, to take care of my great grandmother. So she was the one that stayed at home, lived with my great grandmother until my great grandmother passed. And I'm actually in the family, that exact family home right now, because that's where my aunt continued to live. Both of your comments about the female role is also interesting because both my dad's generation and myself, it's all boys. So when it came down to this aunt, it was which of the uncles, not the
Hmm.
aunts, which I used to find interesting, which of the uncles is stepping up, which one of my other uncles originally stepped up before I stepped in, effectively for my dad's role in this. And then in our own family, it's three boys. It is interesting to see who my mom decides she's going to. Any of the financial, other legal, other stuff comes to me. Doing the yard work, thankfully, goes to my other brother because that's not me.
That's funny. But yeah, I mean, we have the same thing. My grandmother, who is like incredibly a feminist, she was born in 1931, has 5 master's degrees. She taught special education in the inner city in New York City for many years, retired with a pension from that. She had a job when women didn't have jobs, and she had a hard job, and also like continued her education her whole life, is like all for like women's rights, everything. She will not call my dad for help. She calls my aunt, she calls me. She will not call my dad. We tell her over and over, call my dad. And she's like, no, that's okay. I don't want to bug him. And I'm like, he's not working. He
Exactly. Yep.
retired. Like, he is perfectly capable of helping you figure out Netflix today, But nope, it goes to my aunt, it goes to me. And despite like her conscious, like her efforts, like who she is as a person is not that. It's still the default, right? Which is
Yeah.
very, very interesting. But I brought that up more in terms of like we don't have that default role in our family organizations anymore, and we don't have the ability to have it in our society because we're of where we're at economically, and also how you know I don't know, deflation of wages with inflation of costs has created a situation where like most of us just can't afford that, right? And for the families that can, like that's wonderful, and it should be equal opportunity in gender roles. um, and also, it's becoming more and more of an issue that workplaces need to be cognizant of for everyone, because this isn't just, mom is going to take off at 3 to pick up kids at school and needs like a little bit of flex time or flexible schedule to be able to handle that. It is which parent is picking up the kids today? What is the expectation on that? And can you even afford after school care? Because in most cases, it is ridiculously expensive. And then on the flip side, like I see my best friend, her mom lives with her, and like her mom's amazing and wonderful and does so much to support the household, and also can't drive and has to go to a lot of doctor's appointments and has a lot of complex medical needs. And it is like, who's going to take her today? Like, how do we figure this out? Like, who's working? When are we scheduling this? And it's a lot of coordination um, to figure out. And it's extra hard when you have like restrictive workplaces and policies that are not flexible to help with that, that don't understand like the nature of humanity, right? Like we are all humans. We are not machines. We are not here to just like pump out work and that's all we do, right? Like I think for most of us, family is more important and more of a core value to us than contributing economically. And so it becomes a very big incentive to keep somebody at a workplace to have policies that are flexible in each direction.
definitely agree with that. In fact, my firm actually, so we already had sick leave, and you could take unlimited sick leave, and you could take sick leave to care for. Generally, it was to care for a child, was the understanding. When we started becoming aware of this problem, we actually changed our policy that you could use sick leave to take care of an ailing uh, member of the family. We use that loosely because we've had some people use it to take care of their pets. Uh, but then one of the things we just did last year, as this issue started becoming prominent to us, is we ended up creating a separate charge code that was caregiving. So that sick leave became you're taking care of yourself, and caregiving became you're taking leave to take care of somebody else.
Yeah, that's always good. We have similar policies, but different in a couple key areas. And I imagine we do have multiple people on our team that are caregivers of children and adults and elderly in all of these directions. So we offer, sick leave can be used for physical, mental, or doctor's appointments for anyone in your family. That's always been available. And we have a week of sick leave just allocated day one of everybody's employment. We have accrued PTO, but our rules on PTO are like, that's really you're taking a vacation. Like if you're taking an afternoon off to take a kid to a doctor's appointment, or you're taking Friday off so you can take your mom to get tests or whatever they need, like that doesn't count. Like you're still doing all the work that you would have done that week, right? And so for us, it's like if you are willing to make sure all of your stuff is done and handled, and you're working weird hours because you want to flex this time to care give, great, whatever, we don't care, right? That's not going to be an issue. We have a couple people on the team who have, interesting like spouse situations where they trade on and off with kids, and that timing might be weird. So they might have the morning shift or the afternoon shift, but they're starting work at 10 or 11 a.m. and just working through dinner, taking a break for dinner, and then coming back for a couple hours in the evening. That's totally fine too, right? And it's not that we're tracking hours, we're tracking deliverables. And so for our PTO, when you're truly taking PTO, it means like you're not going to be able to do a thing that is on your desk to do, right? So since we're a CAS firm, we do a lot of accounting. If it's a payroll you have to run, if you're going to be out, you need to make sure the backup is there, ready to do it, knows it's their responsibility to do it. That's PTO, right? Like somebody else is handling your stuff. But if you're just like getting all your deadlines done, getting all your deliverables done, you're just doing it in a weird organization, that doesn't count as time off in our book.
That's awesome. That's great. And, you hear a lot more about companies having, very favorable policies to help people navigate these things. And there's, a lot of states at this point even have mandated rules around allocating time off. But I think there's also there's the challenge behind even what's permitted within the scope of your policies. I can remember times when my kids were young, when I know there was I could have taken time off for certain things, but there was client deliverables that were expected. There was expectations where you're part of a team doing something, and there's all of those pressures of I don't know, maybe it's the guilt of actually going and taking care of your family for those things and leaving all that other stuff that becomes difficult to navigate, and a big stressor.
So, yes. And 20 years ago, when I started my career, the flexibility wasn't there. Like if you wanted to be in a top public accounting firm and have a kid, you got standard typical maternity leave was a couple weeks off paid, and then you had to take short-term disability if you wanted to take more time, or just unpaid time off, and they would hold your job for 3 months, which was the federal law, but that's it, right? So okay, great, then you come back to work, then you have to figure out who's taking care of the kid when you're at work, right? And for us in public accounting, busy season is not you can get off at 5
Oh,
and go
yeah.
pick your kid up at daycare. Like, that is not the answer. Like, it does not work. And most daycares are not open until midnight. So now you have to figure out, how do I show face at the office and also make sure my child is taken care of, and also, coordinate this with a spouse, presumably, right? And if you have two people that both work in public accounting, and this, of course, 20 years ago, who want to do this, and you're both expected to be at the office late at night working through things, how do you do it? Like, you can't. Yep. So then they have, flex schedules. And so my experience was, generally it was the woman who took the flex schedule and reduced their salary and reduced the expected charge hours. And they would leave the office at 4 or 5 p.m. to go get the kid at daycare, and still ended up doing almost the same amount of work, but were paid,
sure.
A third less. And that was consistently propagated as a, like, well, you have a flexible schedule, and a flexible schedule is not full time, which means that you're not getting full time pay. And in many cases, not eligible for benefits either. Mm-hmm. And so, it was like a very interesting moment to be in public. And I, luckily for me, had a kid when I was not working for a large public accounting firm with these old school policies that I know have changed significantly over the years. But was able, like, I didn't get really a maternity leave for various reasons, but when you work for yourself, like, I don't know, like, that it doesn't work. It's not the same. But I was able to pick my kid up at daycare and, work it out with my ex-husband in terms of, like, who was dropping off, who was picking up, when we had hours of, like, focus, when I was here or there at the office. And it was never stressful for me to figure out. And I didn't have to sacrifice, promotion or sacrifice salary to be able to do that. And I was very thankful for that. And also, talking to my friends who are in public accounting, a lot of them, when you spend so many hours in your 20s in an office, like, you tend to build deep relationships with people.
Your coworkers.
They had yeah, totally. I mean, like, we are surrounded by accountants when we're in this profession, right? And it is who the core of my friendships lasting into, this stage of life are with. And many of them had a very different experience, and many of them left public accounting to go work for family offices or go work for smaller tax, firms that understood, that were more family oriented, and were capable of giving them what they needed to be successful without compromising significantly on their career. And that is also a detriment. So, like, circling all the way back to why this research is so important and why this conversation is so important is because of that. Like, we should not put anybody that is trying to do the right thing by taking care of their family in a position where they cannot advance or have to compromise very heavily on their career or their financial earnings to be able to do that. That is, I think, a violation of at least my core values, and I think the core values of America as a whole, right? Like, we started as a family-oriented country.
I think in accounting that we too often forget that we have to put our own mask on first, like in an airplane, right? Put our own mask on first before we help others. And our whole thing is, oh, there's clients, I gotta help the clients, I gotta do all this stuff. And we're giving so much of ourselves that we're not taking that time to take care of ourselves. It's part of the reason why at the center, we created this whole personal resilience program, which is really, for you to be that strong rock and foundation for the clients, you need to be solid yourself first. So it really is a matter of taking care of ourselves, and then we can take care of others. In fact, we can take care of more others, the stronger that we are as a foundation. And that's also why a lot of what we do is based in teams, because then even if you're faltering, some of the teammates can jump in to cover or to allow you the time to rest so that you can rest, but we're still holding everybody up. So that's why I think working together in a team is so important, as well as taking care of yourself.
Well, I think there's a nuance to what you just said, because in spirit I agree with you. But if you are let's and I know originally when you set the situation up, you said I my flex schedule made it seem like I was working less, but I was actually still working the same amount. So the caveat I want to put on that, because I am seeing this trend, and it's not a recent trend, we've seen it for a while now, of the like part-time partner, or the path of the part-time, the true flex worker that is actually working less. And some of the calls that I see happening, calls meaning like people are saying, if even if you go to a flex schedule, which is a reduced schedule, it shouldn't take you longer to get to, let's say, partner, or to a senior level. And my contention is no, it should, because if this is actually a true reduction in the amount that you're working, you actually are working less and you're not getting as much experience. So it should take you, let's say, proportionally longer. And proportionally may or may not actually be true, but it should actually take you longer. I'm curious for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, if you're truly actually reducing the schedule, I would absolutely agree with you. What I witnessed in this case was most of and this is, as a staff and a senior associate and a new manager, is the people that were like one level above me were the ones that were like having kids, and they were like, go career all the way. And then all of a sudden they have to figure out these schedule shifts and weren't capable of being in the office. They were still managing exactly the same workload. That didn't change at all. They were assigned the same number of clients. They were assigned the same jobs as the prior year. They were overseeing all of it. They were signing all of those tax returns. Their billable hours expectation was reduced by the firm, but it didn't matter because they were still handling everything. And in my experience, like when you are crunched like that and you're not just like dawdling around and don't really care how long things take, you're actually more efficient. So these people, and not all of them women, but predominantly women, there were some men in this category as well that I witnessed, were like doing the exact same job they did the year before for less pay with less promotability. And that was the piece that I took exception to, because it's like, it's one thing to say like, hey, I am consciously taking a step back. I don't want as much work. I would like to work less. Like, work life is important to me. Like, I want a 4-day work week and I don't want to work more than 8 hours a day. Like, great, wonderful. I love that that's a conversation that exists today. And in those scenarios, I 100% agree with you. That will take longer to get to the next level because you are just not getting as much experience and not handling as much. This was, the firm would not allow them to leave at 5 to go pick up the kid. So they had to accept a flex schedule. But at the same time, the actual job responsibility was exactly the same. Nobody changed that. And they were more efficient. So it's like, shouldn't you reward them for being more efficient and figuring out ways to be more efficient on these projects? And the answer was no. It was a disincentive.
Yeah, we could go into a whole nother thread, which we won't, about the productivity and the efficiencies of the timekeeping and billable hours and all of that stuff that goes with that.
Totally. I totally agree.
I think Byron, going back to kind of what Byron said earlier, I think there's also there's two interesting aspects when we look at the pressure around this. One is the organizational pressure to be there and work however many hours. And then Byron also mentioned this personal or individual thinking of, well, I need to look like I'm committed, or I need to show that I'm committed, maybe is the better way to say that, and do that. And that's also something that I find very interesting, because our firm is very progressive in our approach to, and we use PTO for the whole, anything that's you're getting paid for. So sick, caregiving, actual vacation, which is what we call when you take it and you're not doing anything, as Liz's PTO is. We also have volunteer time off that we track. So we have all these things that all fall under the PTO bucket, and we're on an unlimited PTO plan, which means that you get approval for planned PTO. But I think there's kind of like this two sides, because we've also had a lot of people that have come from other organizations that are hesitant to take some of these things. And we're like, no, you just go. Or they're like, oh, I didn't get pre-approval for it. And we're like, no, then you just mark it, because it's you did it. just mark it as that's what it is. So because the reason we have different charge codes for it is we're trying to see what people are using it for so that we can better understand, and we have some data to understand where are people's needs. Are we seeing an increase in, for example, caregiving needs? Are people actually volunteering and contributing to the community? Because that's something that we want to support as well.
So you're not putting my name on like the list of do not promote because
Oh, that's the secret list, Byron. We don't talk about that list.
I'm on it for other reasons. It's okay. I understand.
I will say that we do analyze it to look for abusers, because we
True.
have had people that have, for example, we just had it this past holiday season where we had some people take really long vacations, which we allow, and true vacations in the Liz sense of the word, like they were disconnected and didn't do stuff. And then they requested PTO for the holidays, and we went, you already took like two week long trips.
Yeah.
So 4 weeks already, 4 weeks. You've already taken that. We are not approving another PTO one, especially when you have projects that are behind.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's like that double edge, right? Of having these types of policies and potential abusers who come in and do take full advantage. And there's obviously other aspects of the way in which you manage team members and the abusers and those things that occur. But there definitely is a for those who care, a personal sense of like, I don't want to take off time that like is unfair to the rest of the team or is like comes off as being unfair to the rest of the team or abusive. So it's more than just having the policies in place, but I think it is also the culture that you are fostering to make sure that people know it is okay to take off. I mean, I can remember now, of course, this is 25 years ago, give or take. So different time, different world then. But, it was tax season. I was a young staff accountant in a CPA firm, and my brand new baby girl was in the NICU in the hospital. And, I still found my 8 hours to crank out tax returns like that same week. And I've been trying to think back, like, I don't think I was expected to be in the office. I really don't. Like it was a good firm. It was a small firm, a family firm. But I also at the same time didn't feel that I had that space to not be in the office cranking tax returns on March 21st as a young accountant starting my career.
Yeah, I think you're totally right though. I think that comes back to organizational culture, which is why I kind of brought up the two sides.
Yeah,
The term that we use at the center for it is better business culture, that you need to have better business culture. And part of that is this acceptance that people will take leave and to not question it unless there's actually a belief of abuse. And
right.
it's really touching to me because we make people post their planned leave, or actually even when they're sick, we tell them post it into the team's channel for the firm, or at least for your team, so that they know, hey, I'm going to be out.
Right.
And this is what's happening. So it's kind of it creates a transparency, and that's optional, where like you don't have to tell us that you're going for a doctor's appointment or what doctor you're
Right.
going to. Some of our team chooses to overshare, and sometimes I'm like, oh, did not need to know that. But a lot of the times I think it creates that transparency also creates a level of trust.
That's awesome.
Because we're like, and then also, but the thing that really touches me is when we see someone, for example, um, I gotta take my kid to the doctor for this, or even I will post like I gotta go take my aunt for a couple of appointments or to do this. The support that comes back from the team,
Yeah.
that's the part that I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this, because you see the team either showing empathy, sympathy, whatever it might be, or support to say, hey, we're praying for you, or whatever it might be. Hope it all goes well. That's the stuff that I think if you don't surface that, that people don't know that it's okay, and they don't know that they have the support of everyone else.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And fostering that type of culture comes from a strong leader. So that's a testament to like you have built a culture where it's okay for you to do that and for everyone else to do that, and showing that gives that feedback loop. And to Byron's point earlier, like yeah, there always be potential for abuse, but if you have the right people and the right team and the right culture, then it doesn't like building policies for good like and for the intention of good is very different than building policies for exceptions and for people that are intending to overstep. And that is a cultural thing, right? I don't think anyone, well, there may be a small subset of people that start a job and think I'm gonna like exploit every potential hole possible and like do as much as I can to get away with stuff. Like, sure, that potentially could exist in a small population, but I tend to believe that the vast majority of people truly start at an organization with the intention of good, and they want to do a good job and they want to follow policy in like a good way. And so designing policy for good requires good culture and requires the leaders to be transparent and vulnerable. And vulnerability is very, very difficult, especially for a lot of leaders, or I should say, a lot of people in charge.
I think both
That's a good
both sensible
clarification,
words,
right?
yes.
Yeah. So,
You raise a good point, because I think that is part of what makes it okay. And so we do need leaders and people in charge to demonstrate that. And I think I did start a lot of that. And I made sure that I consciously, every time someone posts, that I show support, even if it's just an
mhm,
emoji sometimes. But I often will
mhm,
make sure that I comment. And sometimes in the beginning too, I also used to comment, I'm glad you're using your flex time.
mhm,
I'm glad you're using this, because it's intended for that, just to reinforce
mhm.
that messaging. And then I had to make sure that I shared that I
Yep.
was doing stuff and I was leveraging it, so that others would see that it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the longer the vulnerability comes from all directions, the better the culture is. And there's been a lot of research to support that. And so, I think as our industry is going through a big shift and change and opening up and being more considerate of the human experience and creating these policies that are meant to support families and support caregiving in every direction, the consideration has to be that like having a policy that says that is one thing, having a culture where it's accepted is another one. So create that with vulnerability and with using that time and being vocal about it, and making sure that like from the bottom to the top and the top to the bottom, like everybody knows that it's expected that you will have a family member that needs you at some point, and that's okay.
Well, we've been reflecting a lot about kind of our past, and we've all admitted that our experience of this is pretty old. I will say from trauma, our past trauma in working at large consulting firms, actually, and in Byron's case, or sorry, large accounting firms, and in Byron's case, even a smaller one. But I also think it's important that we highlight, for example, that our profession has some major initiatives. For example, AICPA, Women's Initiatives Committee, all which I know Byron's involved with. So I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on what the profession level is kind of looking at there, Byron. But I also want to bring it back to something Liz said earlier. I know it started as women's initiatives, but I personally have a problem with it still being called women's initiatives, because it does and it should benefit everyone. But Byron, maybe you can
Yeah.
tell us some of what you saw when you were on WIC, and
Yeah.
what are they really fighting? What are they really fighting for?
Well, a lot of the discussions right now, because to your point, we are at a point in time where I think generally most good employers do have policies and things in place. Culture is another thing, but there was a lot of discussion around just helping people even to navigate or approach those conversations or challenges, to equip people with it, like, oh my God, that there's situations where daycare centers closed down, or my kid is sick, so they can't go to daycare. And there's a lot of people who just don't even know how to manage those challenges and who to talk to and like how to navigate. So a lot of the conversations were really around creating some enablement for people, like who can you call, like go to your HR, your boss to discuss and come up with game plans, and just making people like aware that you do even have these policies at work, because a lot of people don't even know, right? Like they know they have sick time, they know they have vacation time, but they don't know that there's other programs or policies available to them to take care of partners and parents and the non-traditional types of situations. So I think that was really like my recollection, a lot of the conversations of just creating awareness and enablement for people to navigate it, and helping to support those who do want to put policies in place. In fact, I believe there was a resource that we had created at one point, or that the committee had created at one point, for firms who didn't necessarily know like what policies to put in place. They were giving some like ideas of programs and policies for people who are starting firms or smaller firms that just don't know how to address it, because, in fairness to, as all of us have been or are business owners, I mean, this can be difficult to navigate from a financial perspective, especially when you are like early in building your practice or your business, and like key people who you're depending on to help you get to a point of success, whatever that is for your organization. It can be difficult when they are facing these types of challenges, and how you can even navigate that. So I believe there was some resources to help provide some guidance there at some point as well.
Yeah, so there's two things you said that I want to take note of. One being non-traditional. Um, that terminology has been used so often for anyone that is not like a single workhorse, right? That like can dedicate all of their time to office, to production, to billable hours, or however you want to define that. And also like it is to the point where that type of terminology and that type of usage is like it's not standard. It's not okay, right? Like, and I know that from you, like that's not coming from a bad place. I don't mean to like come across that way. I just mean that like the industry as a whole has bucketed this into non-traditional, which is changing, because that like it is everybody has circumstances. Every single person has circumstances. Everybody makes choices, right? And it should not be the choice, the only choice. The traditional choice is work above family, right? We should be able to figure out, especially with the technology we have at play today, to integrate these things in a way where you don't have to make that choice, right? Where the policies support doing all of the things and not having to make a choice of family over career, which is what non-traditional was like signaling. Does that make
I love
sense?
that call out. Yep. I love that call out. We need to re-norm what the expectation of is a working professional, which is the ability to balance
Right.
work and life needs.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And when I was referring to non-traditional, what I meant is when we think of traditional caregiving, we think of parents and children. And what I meant in non-traditional is taking care of aunts and uncles and parents and all like the things that don't fall under just the parent-child relationship, because
Horses.
What's that?
Horses.
Oh,
I was
horses.
teasing you.
Yeah, horses, non-traditional. Exactly. Like I mean, but that's true too. I mean, even like animals and like people have responsibilities that go beyond just their children. And that's what I meant by non-traditional is,
Right.
not the parent-child relationship, more than that.
And that's also like what the industry has used to define and segregate anybody that is not on a traditional career path, which is all work all the time. But what I'm saying is like that makes no sense, because everybody has circumstances,
Exactly.
responsibilities, life
Yeah.
things. Like this is like everybody has these choices and these decisions, and pegging it as traditional or non-traditional is a problem because it is not inclusive at all of like any of this other stuff going on. So that's comment number one. And I do think that that's a big conversation that is happening actively in what Donny said, like redefining what a standard work expectation is and putting that in terms of ways that people can actually live their lives and move into maybe a more evolved industry as a whole. And the secondary thing is like all of these, and this is actually something when I worked at a couple big firms, was asked to join their like women's initiative groups and like all of that stuff. And I refused. And I refused probably for the same reason, Donny, that you're like, this shouldn't be called women's initiatives. Because foundationally and fundamentally, to me, feminism is expecting equality and equal treatment and the ability to have the same opportunities without any kind of bias there. And if I have to join some committee called some Women's Initiatives Committee to have a voice in an organization, that is not an organization I need to be at.
Oof, I'm like, I wish we had more. That's like probably a whole nother. I'm totally with you on that. It's also why I'm not a fan of ERGs and a lot of the women's initiatives things too. But we'll probably get in a lot of trouble if we start that conversation, and we don't have the time right now too. But I definitely agree with you. There's I think a misnomer, and in this case, as you're indicating, a misnaming in some sense of how we're framing these, which I think also leads into in some cases, I see other women using that as the rallying call and why there's so much power behind it. But yet at the same time, is it really achieving, again, probably another conversation for another time.
Definitely a bigger conversation around terminology and intentionality and what that looks like. And also in this caregiving theme, right, in this conversation, I am the one that brought up many times it does fall to women and historically did. And so I understand why it's bucketed in that way. And also that to me is absolute bullshit because we are all really good at all the things. And like, Donny, you are a much better caregiver to your aunt than I ever could be to an elderly person. And like, I know that, I respect that. And also like, why should the like flexibility to be capable of doing that be bucketed under a women's initiative when it is not? It is a human initiative. And like all of this evolution of thought needs to be considered in that.
Well said. Before I forget, and as we kind of come to a close, I do want to, so listeners out there, if this is something that you are interested in, for, against, agree, disagree with us, the Accounting Move Project is actually doing research on this. And so if you would like to help out with our research, please go to help.improvetheworld.net/caregiving. So again, that's help.improvetheworld.net/caregiving. Closing thoughts?
Thank you for the conversation, guys.
Yeah.
That was a good
Great
one.
conversation. And I mean, I'm excited about the progress that we've seen and that it is a conversation that continues.
Absolutely.
We'll see all you next time, and we will have to figure out time for that bigger conversation too.
The evolution of feminism.
Bye.
All right.
Let's go.
Bye, guys.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.